Welcome into King Whale's album review party. But actually, today we are having a emergency broadcast type of episode. And it's not going to be reviewing an album today. We're just going to review a track. More specifically, a couple of lines in that track that are poised to blow up the hip hop community again.
They were the lines heard around the world.
The lines heard around the world. Yeah, this is going to start World War III in hip hop again. Yeah, that's what, man, that's so accurate because that's exactly what happened last time. So, anyway, for anyone wondering what exactly we are talking about, excuse me. So, if anyone remembers First Person Shooter, which came out last year, because, yeah, last year, right? End of last
hmm
year, I think. Okay.
hmm
Where Drake and J. Cole released a really good track, really good verses by both of them. I think J. Cole did kind of like stand on Drake a little bit, but that's
hmm
bound to happen when you put J. Cole on a track.
hmm
And J. Cole said that he, Aubrey, and Kendrick are the big three. Like we started a league. Your cat wants to get in on this too.
Bluebell has some serious thoughts
Bluebell
about K
has
Dot's
her own
verse.
thoughts about K Dot. That's hilarious.
Tell
Um,
tell the people, Blue. You heard it
oh,
here.
yep, you heard it here first. So J. Cole basically was like, we the big three, like we started a league, which is one of the lines. Who was
hmm
the best? Is it Aubrey, Kendrick, or me? We the
hmm
big three, like we started a league. Right now, I feel like Muhammad Ali,
hmm
kind of like a flexing line and kind of way to say that like J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake are on top of the rap game. And it was a very
In
solid,
no particular order either.
yeah,
Just the big three.
just the big three. Yeah, no like this is not Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, if that makes sense. This is like three equal guys. You know what I mean? He wasn't saying like one of them is above the others, even if it's a big three.
hmm
So naturally, um, because with that line, J. Cole kind of put, and like there's an argument to be made for those three being at the top of their rap game. Drake is certainly the most successful out of the three of them. You can't really
hmm
deny that based upon all the success he's had with his albums and singles and stuff, and because of his crossover appeal.
hmm
Within the hip hop community, you'd argue that Kendrick Lamar is probably the most successful within hip hop, as
hmm
most of the things, probably the most critically acclaimed. Like most of his projects have been well received.
Yes. And I think some of the things that make Kendrick great have reached outside of rap itself.
Hmm.
Like with him winning a Pulitzer is
Yeah,
huge. The only person outside of jazz or classical music to win a Pulitzer Prize. Like he's very much in his own in his own league there.
and I definitely say that they have like Kendrick and Drake have both carved out very different levels of success. For Kendrick, it's been critical success. For
hmm
Drake, it's been commercial success. And
hmm
J. Cole right now is just kind of in between both of those
hmm
because he's had a lot of critical success, not as much as Kendrick, and he's had a
hmm
lot of commercial success. One could say arguably more than Kendrick, but not as much as Drake, which is
hmm
why, kind of makes sense with his big three analogy.
hmm
However, it turns out there was one person who didn't really agree with that. Um,
who was it? Will
yeah,
was
who
it
could that have been?
who could that have been?
Was it a critic? I mean, was it, it was not. It
It
was
was not.
actually, it was actually the only person who was not on first person shooter.
hmm
And that was Kendrick Lamar.
It looks like
And
we're getting a different third person shooter now.
that's
We're beyond
exactly
first person.
that's what he might as well should have called this song that. But, you know. Um so yeah, and so on Kendrick's track, well, a track that he featured on, which he's doing it again, not even on
hmm
his own tracks, just doing it on feature.
hmm
For
Doesn't need a
Future and
whole
Metro
album.
Boomin. Mm-hmm. Is a track called Like That. Now it's on an album by Future and Metro Boomin, right? Like they
Yes,
did a whole project
they
together
did
they
a whole
just dropped.
project together.
Okay.
hmm
Was this a single
Okay.
from it? Do you know?
The a single. I don't know. I don't know if
Okay.
it was released
I
because
don't think it
I only
was.
heard about it once
after
the
the
album
album
came
dropped.
out.
Yeah,
So I don't
exactly.
think it was released as a single.
I don't think it was either. Yeah. And I think that also makes sense. So you kind of had to listen through the whole album to get to it. Of course, if you're looking at a Boomin and Future album and you see it's featuring Kendrick Lamar, you're probably just going to skip right ahead to that track. So
Mhm.
makes sense why Kendrick did it this way. But
Yeah,
the line is basically blank the big three. It's just big me.
great line.
Just
Feelings aside, like I don't care who you like, that's an amazing line. It's so antagonistic for seemingly no reason either, other than no, I need to set the record straight. I
right.
do not agree that we are part of a big three.
And it's like, it's not like, J. Cole said, like, me and Drake are the best duo, or like, I don't know, like, there's not really, like, obviously, all he was doing was trying to give Kendrick his flowers as being one of the best. And J. Cole and Kendrick have had some great collaborations, and J. Cole and Drake had some great collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they've worked on a song together since Control, which we're going to get into in a little bit, back from 2013.
Mm-hmm.
But safe to say, after this, we probably won't be getting that J. Cole Kendrick album.
No, come on. Are you sure?
I don't know,
You
man.
sure they could make up still?
I
Please?
mean, I don't think Kendrick would even want to do
Pretty
it.
please?
Not even J. Cole. Like, this is Kendrick's like, nah, it's beneath my level.
Yeah, he really went for blood with this verse.
He really did. And like throughout the whole verse, you don't really know what he's talking. Like, he doesn't sound like it's specifically geared towards anybody. He's just kind of, going along with the beat, obviously, rapping and all that stuff. And once you get to that point, you have to re-listen to the whole verse and try to pick out, like, is this who he was aiming at the entire
Yeah.
verse? Once you realize it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Some lines like it's a lot of goofies with a check hits harder when you know he's talking about Drake and his album For All the Dogs.
Yes. So, yeah, Kendrick is definitely holding no holds barred as he usually does. So I guess before we start talking about when he did this the last time and why this might start another world war, do you agree with Kendrick? Do you feel like his assessment that, like, nope, it's just big me, there is no big three? Do you feel like that's accurate?
I th- I think I honestly I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't have I don't think a perspective on a big three. And honestly, I'm not sure I would even put J. Cole in that list if there was
Really?
a big three, even
Okay.
though I like him. I just don't see him in either the commercial or critical or even like the underground side
Mm.
of hip hop or rap to take over to the point to where he'd be a fundamental pillar like that. I think I really like his music, but I do not think he's as fundamental. I think Drake is really only there because he's as commercially successful as he is, but he does not release the same kind of music that J. Cole or Kendrick are releasing. And I think Kendrick, especially with see, to me, if you have the audacity, like the energy and the strength to release a verse like this, you are, because no one else is trying to take shots this big and has like the lyrical horsepower to
Yep.
back it up.
Hmm.
Because anybody can try to make a diss track, but I don't think anybody can ruin you quite like Kendrick can. So like analytically and so deeply that you're like an onion peeling back layer after layer every time you listen to the track to see, oh, this is how deep he went.
Yeah. And so I have to say, it's like, I feel like I don't necessarily think that Kendrick Lamar is the best rapper, but that's just my personal opinion and what I think makes a great rapper. But I think Kendrick is the only one who can do this.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'd have to agree. because I think
Mhm.
I don't think any other rapper could do it, and I don't think any rapper could make the same statement, and I don't think any other rapper could do it and have people even actually care, let alone be right. Like, there's a
Right.
difference between like if you say something and everybody cares and like comes out and talks about it, like okay, you shook up the industry. But there's a lot of rappers who could say something like this and nobody would respond to it. Like
Hmm.
even really good ones like Pusha T or someone else like that. I feel like he
Hmm.
could say something like this and people would be like, Okay, yeah,
Like whatever.
okay, yeah, sure,
Brush it off and move
yeah,
on, or make a sloppy diss track in
mm-hmm,
retaliation and again move on. But this doesn't feel, at least for like the zeitgeist of talking about it, like I
mm-hmm,
don't think this would affect Drake in a commercial sense, because
right.
the people that commercially support Drake do not care what
No, no,
Kendrick Lamar
mm-mm.
thinks or has to say about it. But when people talk about it, I think this is something that is not going to leave Drake in conversation for a long time.
No. And like that's the incredible, like if you go out to most of America, if you talk to my wife even
Hmm.
and you ask her like, "Hey, who's a better artist? Drake or Kendrick Lamar?" She'll probably be like, "Who's Kendrick
Who is
Lamar?"
Kendrick Lamar?
Right, like the vast majority of people, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, I mean, I don't really know who Kendrick is, so Drake." But if you talk to the hip hop
Right.
community, who's the better rapper? You don't even have to. They'll be like, "Is Kendrick Lamar one of the options?" Before you even
Hmm.
finish the question, you know.
Hmm.
So like, and I think like Drake really wants that kind of respect from the hip hop community.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think he'll really ever get it just because that's not exactly the niche that he came carved out. Like it's super successful and everything.
Yeah.
Um, so like Kendrick and Drake could go back and forth for a long time because Drake could be like, "Look at all my success," and Kendrick would be like, "I'm still a better rapper,
Right.
have more commercial success." But
Like I don't care how many how many record sales you have. I
right,
can out rap you every single time. And he proves it by
yep,
being on the offensive like this.
yep,
Because really, like, if you're Drake, what do you do? Because you can't meet him at this level. So
uh-uh.
what, you make an awful diss track that sucks and just uh reaffirms everything that Kendrick just said, or you try to take like the higher road, but even then it doesn't even necessarily feel like the higher road, because again, how strongly Kendrick murders him on this verse.
Or you just do the Chris Brown and get in a music video with him and pretend that you guys are all made up now, like he did with No Guidance, which again is like again for Jake to like take the comedic route to do that, like it just further proves because first of all that music video is hilarious and I love that Drake used that to squash the beef and it
Hmm.
created a very commercially successful project. Like,
Right.
and that's exactly what Drake is. Like, while
Which
Jay-Z is the most successful rapper of all time, there's no really denying that. Drake has the most crossover appeal out of anybody.
Mhm.
So, like, if Jay-Z hadn't ever existed or something like that, then maybe we'd be talking about Drake as the most successful. But
Mhm.
he's definitely right there behind Jay-Z. I mean,
Yeah, and I think maybe at least in like modern pop culture, I think he has longer staying power than say Jay-Z
mhm.
has. Like Jay-Z has a huge commercial history, but going forward, there's not a whole lot of talk like there is at the level of Drake.
Yeah, I
At
mean,
least
you
for
look
for
at
people who aren't plugged into like rap culture.
Mhm. And like you look at look at their careers, like most people think that Jay-Z is kind of like a 90s rapper, and he kind
Hmm.
of is, but his first album came out in 97,
Hmm.
Reasonable Doubt. That's the same year I was born. And by then there were acts that had already kind of been established in doing 90s hip hop, like Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. And obviously Biggie and Tupac. And so Jay-Z came onto the scene and he kind of dominated the 2000s. And then by 2010, there was this whole new wave of rappers that were emerging onto the scene. Pusha T was coming from Clips. You got Kendrick and his Black Hippie label, all those guys. Drake obviously started around 2010. Big Sean from Kanye West label. Meek Mill was in there. Jay Electronica started. ASAP Rocky. Like all these new guys. It was like a whole crowd of rappers that just kind of emerged. And like since 2010, like we've kind of talked about Jay-Z, but I feel like we've talked more about his life than we really have his music. Like after the
Hmm.
Blueprint 3, there's been a lot of successful Jay-Z stuff, but not quite to that level. Like if there was like a parabola or like a parallelogram almost, it's like that's kind of
Hmm.
when it's like, and
It's
now
going
we're in,
down.
yeah, now we're in the 2020s. He does a couple features here and there, but he's talked about as being successful, but he's not really talked about the same way that he was.
Yeah.
We're in 2024. So that was like 14 years and maybe a little bit longer than that. Drake is still 14 years later, right at the top. If he releases a single right now, it does super well. That's
Hmm.
just who Drake is at this point. So I think you're right. He does seem to have a little bit more staying power in that regard.
So I'm curious. I want to get your thoughts on one of Kendrick's lines. It's towards the end of his verse where he says that Prince outlived Mike Jack. And, comparing Drake has often been compared to Michael Jackson in a who has a bigger impact on pop culture and pop music as a whole. How do you feel about that comparison there of number one, Prince outliving Michael Jackson culturally, and then number two, the comparisons of Kendrick being like a Prince
Yeah.
outliving Drake being like a Michael Jackson?
Again, it's one of those things that's like we're talking about skill versus popularity. And
Hmm.
that's not always a straight line. It's not always a straight comparison. Because
Hmm.
again, if you're looking at popularity, I mean, it's like, come on, Michael Jackson obviously outclasses Prince in every way. Like, there's just
Hmm.
no denying it. He's
Hmm.
the king of pop. Michael Jackson is, one of the reasons we have music sounding the way it sounds today.
Hmm.
Um, but if you look at Prince, like if you handed Michael Jackson a guitar, do you think he could do what Prince has done?
No.
No.
And
That's
even aside from guitar, I think Prince, like, I think he was doing like his own thing. And
mhm.
the fact that he could compete, like even be in the conversation with Michael Jackson while doing his own thing, I think like today I would rather pick up a Prince record than a Michael Jackson record. I think I think most of the time I'm picking Prince over Michael Jackson
Yeah. And I mean
today.
the thing is like vocal ability, I don't
Hmm.
think there's anything Michael Jackson has sang that Prince can't sing. Prince
Hmm.
could sing every single Michael Jackson song that has ever been. And he could
Hmm.
do it while playing guitar and take an incredible solo on it as well on guitar.
Right.
Even dancing. Like I'm like, I might give the edge to Michael Jackson on dancing just because I've seen him dance more than I've seen Prince, but it's not like it's a huge wide gap. It's not enough to fill the gap between all the other musical things that Prince can do. And so
Right.
I think with that line, he is really, really illustrating that, like, no matter how successful you get, Drake, you're never going to be as good as me. And that's why I think while this is kind of a response to J. Cole, um, because it's a direct response to J. Cole in the line.
Hmm.
This line, I think, kind of narrows it into just Drake.
I
And I
think it's
feel
way
like,
more about Drake specifically.
yeah, and I feel like Kendrick's like, sit down, J. Cole. We're not talking about you.
Of this big three, you would be number three, but
Yeah, like, come on now.
regardless,
Like,
sit down.
let's just talk about the two alphas in the room.
Mom and dad are talking.
Mom and sit down, son. Mom and dad are talking. And yeah, and it's again because it's like I think he's just taken a moment to remind everybody of who exactly he is. And like you said, Prince obviously has a legacy that can never be matched. And Michael Jackson, it's like they're different kinds of legacies, but they'll still be compared.
Yeah.
And of course, in hip hop, when you can make almost everything into a competition, like most people won't say like, "Oh, Prince versus Michael Jackson." Like they never had like this conversation or like this animosity or anything between them. It's just like
Hmm.
they left their own legacies on music. And
Right.
Kendrick is like, "Hey, my legacy is better because
Hmm.
I'm better. You're more popular, but I'm better."
I'm better. Yeah. Drake could never do To Pimp a Butterfly. He never could.
Mhm.
but Kendrick could absolutely do Take Care or Nothing Was the Same, or if you're reading this, it's too late.
Oh yeah.
Like in a heartbeat. Like I feel
Hmm.
like without even thinking, I think Kendrick could do that.
And I think Drake is extremely talented, but there was one thing, like I remember watching the No Guidance music video, and I
Hmm.
remember being like, everything Drake is doing, Chris Brown can do times 1,000. Like if you
Hmm.
look at like singing, obviously Chris Brown is a much better singer, and you could hear it in the song with all the harmonies and stuff that he put in. There was like 9-layer harmonies, and Drake was just singing his one line, and Chris Brown's like, "Woo!" Like had all these melodies. It was like it's not really a comparison there. And
Hmm.
then dancing, like Drake doesn't dance,
Yeah.
and therefore he's nowhere close to Chris Brown.
Hmm.
And even rapping, like Chris Brown is just as good as Drake is, because Drake is not that amazing. So it's
Mm-mm.
like, I don't really know how this is a competition because, like, even if you're just looking at Chris Brown versus Drake and then popularity, I think Drake is still more popular than Chris Brown as the time went on. And that's the only thing that he really has. And for a minute, it was close, but nowadays, Chris Brown also scandals and stuff kind of help diminish that popularity.
Yeah.
But
Made it easier for Drake.
to take over, yeah, kind of just not have to get arrested, and that will help out a lot.
Right. Yeah. If you don't hit Rihanna, apparently it's a lot easier to
Apparently, yeah, it was like instead of hitting Rihanna, maybe just do a song with her. Crazy idea.
just
Um,
saying.
so it's like if you look at the like there's not. It's like there shouldn't be a beef because like he outclasses you in every single way.
Right.
But Drake got popular, and again, he has some really good lines. But I've never heard anything that Drake has done and been like, man, nobody else could do this. I've been like, man, some people couldn't do this, and I've been like,
Hmm.
man, this is something that I think Drake is very unique to.
Hmm.
Like even a lot of Drake's, like I will say, like Drake's popular songs, like his pop songs and all that stuff,
Hmm.
that's something that I don't think Kendrick can do because he doesn't have the voice for it. Like him and J. Cole have a
Hmm.
very soulful voice, and I think
Hmm.
Kendrick can sing anything Drake can sing.
Hmm.
But if you Take Care and you have Kendrick Take Care featuring Rihanna, and you have
Hmm.
Kendrick sing the exact same melody, people are gonna like Drake's song way better because his tone fits pop more. It's gentle, it's welcoming. Kendrick's tone is a lot more R&B, soulful, kind of intense. So there's some things in a way that you could argue that like Drake can do that Kendrick can't do.
And I feel like that reflects too with like the number of projects each of them release, like and the frequency and how often they're releasing. Kendrick feels, at least in his process, that he's more analytical and he's taking more time to really nail down this like thick weave of of like these tight lyrics
Mm-hmm.
that reference each other and are so deeply ingrained into the culture of hip hop, which it feels like he lives and breathes. And to be like a representative of, I can think of nobody better than Kendrick Lamar, because at least it feels in the kind of things that he's putting out, it feels like he cares about it the most. Drake feels like he cares more about success than
Yeah.
he does cultural impact
Mm-hmm.
or necessarily a deeper reflection onto why it is the way it is.
100%. And I'd have to fully agree with you on that one. Because I feel like if you take away Drake's popularity, and he probably wouldn't do it. I mean,
Mhm.
Kendrick will do it whether he has one listener or a million. You like
Right,
he's in it for the craft. And like, I don't know Drake personally, obviously, so I couldn't
right,
really tell you, but again, you can tell by their personas. It's like Drake cares a lot more about popularity, and that's why he keeps making popular music.
right.
Kendrick knows that he doesn't make popular music. He makes music with a message that's for the culture that creates, and he's carved out a completely different niche. And the way that he was even able to be remotely successful with it is a huge testament to what he's been able to accomplish. But again, if you're like in hip hop culture, if you're like, okay, rap battle, Drake and Kendrick, like Drake can't be like, well, Kendrick, you can't sing a pop song, but I can, so that's why you're wrong. Like it just it won't work. It like
And then breaks down halfway through and crying and saying, "Why are you being so mean to me?"
and Kendrick will just
Kendrick,
murder him.
please. I
But
extended an
again,
olive branch.
but again, when it comes to the Billboard Top 100, is anyone going to be like, oh, well, Drake did kill Kendrick in that rap battle. Does that mean that Kendrick's latest single should move up ahead of Drake's? And it's like,
Hmm.
well, maybe on the hip hop, not on the hip hop charts, maybe, but no, Drake's still Drake. So no, Drake's single is
Right.
still gonna outclass any single that Kendrick releases. Like I feel like Drake's is automatically by itself going to become more popular because that's just what it is. And even
Hmm.
and like nowadays, hip hop really is the most popular genre in the world. Um, and that's and I partially agree with that. Like why it's become so popular. I think a lot of elements that aren't really hip hop have helped like make it to be the most popular genre, but that's another
Hmm.
discussion. So and part of that is Drake because people will take any song that Drake does and call it hip hop because it's Drake. But
Right.
he'll have songs where he doesn't rap. Like I can't remember what it was, but it got nominated for a Grammy under the rap charts, and
Hmm.
Drake didn't rap a
He didn't rap on
single
it.
word on it.
Hmm.
And like artists like Post Malone, I have never heard him rap in my life. He
Hmm.
has never rapped on a song. He's a singer, but
Yeah.
because he does a lot of stuff on like the trap inversion just was like, oh, he's a hip hop artist. And it's like maybe a hip hop artist, but he's not a rapper. It's like it
Right.
feels like now we need a separate category for rap and hip hop,
It
you
is
know?
like the actual distinction, especially on like that level of Grammys, has
Mhm.
been completely like there is no like distinction to the greater Grammys. We can have so many different subgenres of rock. You can have like
Yeah.
you have prog, you have hardcore, you have a trillion different ones, but it's just hip hop or rap. Heck,
Yep.
even Andre 3000's solo flute album
Did it
was
get
labeled
classified as hip hop?
in Apple Music, it was classified as a rap album. He didn't even speak. It's just that's instrumental. It's just a
Uh,
flute. But
uh,
again, that's a greater discussion
yeah, that's a whole nother
of
discussion.
how the industry really does not pay any attention to rap and how poorly it's classified and
Well, I guess, do you think that's part of why Kendrick is kind of reigniting this beef with Drake? Like, do you think he's upset because it's like Nicki Minaj once was like celebrating it, like, yes, hip hop is the number one genre in the world, and we did that, y'all, we did that. And it's
Mhm,
like, but again, if Post Malone didn't exist, if Drake didn't exist, I
mhm,
don't think hip hop would be the number one genre in the world because
right.
they are the ones that brought a melodic rapping style kind of singing. And it's like, you can't really be proud that hip hop is the number one genre when you
Mhm.
just kind of made it sound like the other genres that were already number one.
Ooh,
Like,
there's the real question. Is is rap even the number one genre? Is hip hop even really the number one genre? If it's being frontlined by people like a Post Malone or a Drake, who kind of, because of this classification system that is
yep,
really bad at deciphering what is or is not hip hop or
yep.
rap, um, does it even really count?
And that's why to me, I don't mind calling them hip hop. But
Hmm.
it's like, again, rap and hip hop are so intrinsically linked, you have to now kind of separate them. And
Hmm.
like in a way, I kind of wonder if Kendrick is like that's kind of upsetting him and that's why he does this because again, Kendrick's voice and all of his melodies, like he can rap and destroy a trap song, but
Hmm.
he'll never fit in the same niche that Post Malone and Drake have. You know,
Hmm.
singing that pop like Kendrick's voice just doesn't do that. And so I think, in
Right.
5 years, you know, again, Drake and Post Malone can keep making singles that are going to go to the top. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, like Kendrick is going to still probably be considered at the top of the rap game,
Hmm.
but he's not going to be considered at the top of the hip hop game, if that
Right.
makes sense. Because now
Right.
when people think about the most popular artists in hip hop, if you ask anybody on the street, most people will know Post Malone before they know Kendrick.
Hmm.
And I think Kendrick like, you know, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but I feel like everyone would kind of blame Drake for that because
Hmm.
he's the one that really introduced this genre of music. Like I don't think
Hmm.
anyone else would be here. Post Malone wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Drake. All these other guys,
Right.
Quavo, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. And I
Right.
don't think Kendrick likes that. Now, I don't think he's necessarily blaming him. I think he's still just like, I'm still better. But I feel like in the back of his mind, he's got to know, hey, in 5 years, Drake will still be here. I might not
Hmm.
be. In 10 years, you know what I
Who
mean?
who Kendrick
Kendrick.
won't
Like
be here in 5 years?
he'll still be here, but again, will he be considered at the top of the hip hop genre because the hip hop genre keeps changing? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like he'll still be considered the best rapper, one of the best rappers, one of the greatest rappers. But again, if songs where you don't have to rap are getting Grammys for being the best rap song, rap album, and things like that,
You know what? I want to challenge you on that. I think he will. And I'm going to link it back to one of our first episodes, Killer Mike's Michael. Because
good
how
point.
long was Killer Mike just being Killer Mike until he got recognized for it on the level of Grammy? And he did. He didn't change. But with Michael, he made them recognize his skill.
This style of hip hop is still here.
Yeah.
And he did it with a lot of the newer artists that have kind of been accused of changing it. Like I think Black was on that album, and he did great.
Hmm.
And Young Thug was on it too.
Hmm. And that's not to say, like, I'm not saying in a direct, like, specifically Grammys, a direct head to head Killer Mike versus Drake, who's going to win the popularity contest of the Grammys. But
Hmm.
I'm saying, I don't think, like, on that level, I don't think there's no hope or no chance.
Hmm.
And I think Killer Mike kind of showed us that in 2023.
I think that's a good point. And I think I guess it's something we'll have to see in the future.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess just real quickly to, I guess, how do you think this specific verse, how do you think is it gonna impact the rap culture the same way that Kendrick's 2013 on Control did, or Control in 2013 did?
I think he's kind of living up to his promise. Kendrick's promise. He listed Drake was a part of that list of who he's going after.
Yep. And
And and so is J. Cole.
yeah,
But and he did. So I think this will have a greater impact than I think that feature will just from what I've been seeing how much it's been gravitating to people online, like
yeah.
the impact, like the how quickly people have latched on to how devastating this is.
Hmm. And like, I mean, back in 2013, and it created such a huge stir because, first of all, Kendrick did it as a feature on Big Sean's track,
Hmm.
which put Big Sean in the weirdest position because he's like, so Kendrick did this feature and basically just like cussed me out on it and called me
Hmm.
out, and as well as all the other rappers. And I still have to put it out because I can't just be like, hey, Kendrick, I'm not going to put out this feature because that would get all over the tabloids. And now everybody was saying that Big Sean's
Right.
whatever. And so he had to put it out. And then
Hmm.
on this album, it feels like, because here we are 10 years later, and
Hmm.
Kendrick is basically saying, nothing I said changed. On that
Hmm.
album, he's like, who's the best MC? He put himself up there with Jay-Z, Eminem, Nas, and Andre 3000,
Hmm.
artists who have consistently been critically and had a lot of commercial success. And Kendrick just said, yeah, I'm up there with them. Now remember,
Hmm.
this is 2013.
Hmm.
So Kendrick had been doing it for a while, but he came into this class in 2010, really, like the group that was kind of in 2010. So
Hmm.
he'd only been like on the main stage for about 3 years or so.
Hmm.
2013 is also Good Kid, Mad City had just dropped in 2012. That was
Hmm.
his debut album. So Kendrick is still like relatively new to being on the main stage of hip hop and all this stuff. And he
Hmm.
compares himself to these 15-year veterans.
Hmm.
And then he calls out everybody else in the class. J.
Hmm.
Cole, Big Crit. Oh, I forgot about Big Crit earlier. Drake, Big
Hmm.
Sean, Tyler the Creator, the
Wale
Mac Miller, rest in peace. That doesn't really age as well
doesn't age
now,
as quite as well.
especially after he says, "I'm trying to murder you." So that's a little sad. But anyway,
Oh.
he didn't know that was gonna happen. Um, Wale, Pusha T, and it's like, he calls them out and was like, I'm trying to make sure, like, I'm killing you guys. Like, I'm gonna be known as the best, better than all of you. We're all trying to come in this wave, and I am on top. And now it's 10 years later, and J. Cole is talking about, like, yeah, we're a big three. It's me, Kendrick, and Drake. And
Mhm.
Kendrick's like, did I include you
I
when I
don't.
said the best MCs? I don't remember saying
Mm-mm,
uh Jigga, Nas, Drake, and J. Cole. No, no, no. It was
mm-mm.
Kendrick, Jigga, Nas, Eminem, and Andre 3000.
I don't see Born Sinners ever talked about at the same level as To Pimp a Butterfly.
It is not.
And
And
it's not. I think Kendrick has lived up to his promise.
hmm and I think, like, for me, there's elements of Born Sinner that I actually like better than To Pimp a Butterfly and better than Good Kid, Mad City. Um, but I think overall, like, when you look at the two projects, it's not really a comparison.
Mhm,
So, because I think Kendrick was a lot more focused on what he wanted to say. And I think J. Cole, he suffered from a little bit of that kind of like, he's gotten out of it now, but he kind of
mhm,
suffered from the same popularity complex that we talked about Drake having. Like, you could tell on his first album with that single Workout that he released that
mhm,
Nas hated and said was trash, but it did really well.
mhm.
And, that helped get J. Cole up to that stage. And then now he feels like he can kind of just say what he really wants to say. And I feel like J. Cole isn't really concerned about being popular because he's already feels like he's carved out his niche. But again, with
Yes.
Kendrick's line, it feels like he's saying, like, guys, I have never wondered about whether I was popular or not. I
Mhm.
never cared about it. I just
And
made fantastic music because I am a fantastic rapper. Not fantastic. I am the best.
and you know what? Like he proved it. Like he put his head down and he focused on what he wanted to focus on.
Yep.
And I think that's to like a greater conversation of art. I think that's usually the art that resonates the most with people is the art that is the truest to your soul, the truest to, who you are as a person. And I feel like Kendrick is incredibly um detailed and skillful and vulnerable in his music, and it makes for amazing rap.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could have kept talking about this for another like 2 or 3 hours. But we had to drop this episode talking about Kendrick Lamar on Like That and what it means for the rap game as a whole. And so we'll be back with another episode. We were going to do Thundercat's album, but then this came out and we had to address it. And
We
then
had
we
to
got a
address it.
request to do Lucid Dreams by Boy with Ook. So that episode is coming next week.
Stay tuned.